leadership classes, so that means y'all are going to discuss and participate. And so some things take a little bit longer than I originally planned, which is a really good problem to have. So I do want to pick up today with something that we didn't get to on Thursday that I think is really important for us to discuss before we start getting into the book and all of that. So in life, we tend to view things in what we call kind of binary arguments. So it's kind of that idea of if you have an opinion, you either have this opinion or that opinion. I want y'all to give me some examples of what we might consider binary thinking. So the first one that I'm going to think of off the top of our head is you either like vanilla ice cream or you like chocolate. Like most people say, I'm either a vanilla person or I'm a chocolate person, right? So if we write or in the middle here, I'm going to say vanilla, chocolate. What are some other either or?
Cats or dogs.
Cats or dogs?
OSU or OU?
Oh, that's a good one. So OSU or OU.
Coke or Pepsi?
Such a good one.
Neither.
Neither. Who said neither?
Dr. Pepper.
It's funny. I think being from Florida, I just call everything Coke. And now I've finally, at the ripe age of 33, I've gotten to where someone will say, I'm like, do you have Coke or Pepsi products? Because if I just say a Coke and they bring me a Pepsi, I'm like, I'm a Coke person all the way. Actually, I take that back. I'm a Diet Coke person, but a Pepsi person. If I'm going to have the real thing, I do kind of like Pepsi better. But if it's going to be diet and, rot in my insides, Diet Coke. What's some more either or?
Would be like softball or baseball? Like a sport or like alcohol?
Yeah, like I would do like football or basketball, something like that. Football. I even think about that with like colleges, like you're either a football school or you're a basketball school, right?
Yeah.
Ford or Chevy?
I was waiting for these. Ford or Chevy?
iPhone or Android?
iPhone or Android? What else? What are maybe some more serious either or debates we have?
Ooh.
Perfect timing. So I would vouch to say with that, you're either conservative or you're liberal progressive. What are some more serious ones?
Pro-choice, pro-life.
Mm-hmm.
Like organic or non. Penalty or not.
Ooh. Let me put positive death penalty. Death penalty. I got a new one. Hamburger or a plant-based burger?
True.
Ah! Plant-based. I won't ask y'all to raise your hands who shared a Burger King commercial.
Or anti-vax.
Huh? Oh! Oh.
Well, yeah,
Do what?
They said you're a shield person yourself. Just kidding.
It's right.
Vaccines or non-vaccines?
Yeah. For vaccines. Right, we can keep coming up, right, with examples of just things where it's like, you're either for this or you're against it, right? And so we have these arguments of either or. The problem with that is that, are things always that straightforward? No, very rarely. What we call these type of arguments, just so y'all know, so we call them false dichotomies. Okay? And again, anytime you start noticing, and how you can pick up on, like, or start noticing that a false dichotomy is being used is anytime people start an argument or engage in a discussion, a debate, even if it does appear to be civil, if they start justifying kind of their side based off of this, well, you either think this or you must think this, you got to kind of put up a red flag. Okay? So let's talk a little bit of why maybe some of these comparisons or opposite ends of the spectrum maybe aren't so black and white, aren't so either or. I kind of gave my example with the Coke Pepsi one, right? My gut reaction was I'm Coke. But when I really start to think about it, I like Diet Coke, but I like Pepsi. Man, do I love me a good Dr. Pepper every once in a while. You know, and sometimes I like Gatorade better. You know, it just depends. It's a lot more complex and complicated than that. Y'all pick one to kind of help explain maybe why the two that are listed up here are a false dichotomy.
I drive a Ford truck, but I have a Chevy car.
Oh, talk to me more. Does everyone in your family drive a Ford or a Chevy?
No, we got Dodges, we got like, what's the Chrysler Aspens?
Uh-huh.
I think, are they off of Dodge or what are they like?
I don't
They branch
remember.
off of one of them, but I don't remember which one.
Yeah, I think it's
Mhm.
Dodge.
And then, like, my brother has the Chevy Duramax. My sister has like a Honda or Hyundai, whatever,
Mhm.
which one it is.
Yeah.
And then my brother has a little mess around Nissan that he takes, like checking game cameras and stuff.
Yeah.
But he drives a Ford truck, but it's weird. We don't care.
There's no
Never
real
done
brand
that.
loyalty, but it's like if the argument were going, is Ford better, Chevy better, we're kind of quick to jump in, right? I mean, no offense, I've been to so many national FFA conventions, right? But what happens every time like one of the major donor like videos come on? If it's like a Ford commercial, all you hear is boo! And like, really? When you're buying a truck, you're going to care about the price. Like, it's just kind of silly. You know, and I think even, again, kind of going to that example, same thing will happen with tractors, right?
Yeah.
You're either John Deere or Kubota or whatever your family is growing up having. It's like, really, depending on, it's like depending on what the need is, you may
Yeah.
purchase a different one, you know, for whatever you have.
So like I'm a dog person, but then there's certain cats that I like. Cats that are nice and don't attack you. I don't know. You know?
You're like, I'm a dog person, but I like cats occasionally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's like in reality, your dog's going to be the only pet you maybe ever have. Like to me, that's just like, so why do we put
Yeah.
camps in that? What's another one that you want to talk about?
I think mask and anti-mask, like nobody thinks a mask is comfortable to wear, you know, but it's not about if you like having it on your face, it's about keeping people protected.
Mm-hmm.
And like, of course, like there's like, I saw a post from OSU of students with masks on and someone commented like a bunch of sheep emojis, but like,
Oh, I saw that.
the thing is like, yeah, we're being told we have to wear them, but like, for me, I just had COVID, and if I would have been out in public with it, not knowing I had it, and got someone sick, like, I would feel horrible. Like, I'd rather deal with this mask than accidentally get someone else sick, because who knows how they're going to react to it.
Or who they're going home to. Or
Yeah, like,
taking care
cause,
of parents.
because everyone has different levels of symptoms. Like no one in my house fortunately had severe symptoms, but another girl in our friend group had it and she was in the hospital.
My sister was hospitalized.
Yeah, and like
Yeah.
she's even college age just like we are. Like college students seem to think we're bulletproof, but really like we're not.
Well, and again, there's always just kind of a blurry
Yeah.
piece to it, right? And so, again, it's not, we don't have to choose sides
Yeah.
necessarily on this argument so much as just kind of like what's a consensus, what's best for most. Again, if we think back to leadership ethics, right, kind of that utilitarianistic view of just like what's going to be the best for most. What's another false dichotomy that you feel like you could easily break now that you look at it?
The beef and plant-based.
Oh, talk to me more about that.
So me being me, I tend to stay towards beef, but I have some friends who they only eat plant-based stuff, like they're straight vegans. And I asked them about it one time, and she has health issues, and so she has to be plant-based, or else she's not as healthy as she could be.
I have a friend that was bit by a tick, and I forget the name of the disease. And here's the thing, her family ranches
Yeah.
in Orlando, like not far from here at all. Huh? Not Lyme disease. It's alpha something.
Become allergic to red meat.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like she gets violently sick. And to the point where like if her husband's grilling steak and then puts a piece of chicken on the grill after it, she will get violently sick. Like she cannot have it. And it was from a tick bite. And that was a year and a half ago that happened. And so it's kind of interesting. Her family does nothing but ranch and raise cattle, and she can't eat beef anymore at all. So she needs, for her, she's like, man, when I finally figured out what was going on, I went to Burger King and I got me an Impossible Burger. And she's like, my brain thinks it's a hamburger. And it just is like bringing a sense of joy to her life. I know that sounds really dumb, but I mean, it's helpful for her. My pregnancy this time around, I get sick if I eat meat. I can maybe eat meat every 3 days, and it kind of needs to be chicken or something. I'm really grateful for some alternatives right now. And I, prior to being pregnant this time, was kind of like, that just seems silly. That was me, And now I'm like, this is a lot more complex than what I thought it was. What's another one that you want to debunk?
iPhone or Android?
Oh, tell me more.
I'm personally team iPhone, but I have friends that are like team Android. I told my friend, switch to iPhone, Android's better.
Well, are those our only two options?
No.
There's, like,
Anybody have a Google phone?
The one that was playing
Normally doesn't do that, certainly a very good phone, but I've had the Pixel and the Pixel 4, which is the new one. I had an iPhone from like 8th grade all the way up until like 2 years ago. My iPhone 7 randomly forgot my password that I've had forever. The only one I used, the one I still use, it forgot it, and I had to wipe my entire phone. And I went and chucked it at the person, and I said, take it, I don't want it, never want to see it again. But I can say that like I enjoyed iPhones for years. Now I see one and I'm just like, protect your password. It's going to delete everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, sometimes we get into these arguments and we forget that there's actually more options available than just those two things, right? You could say the same thing with the chocolate versus vanilla. I personally prefer mint chocolate chip every time.
Well, I get like the tub, like, that has the strawberry, vanilla, and the chocolate. Yeah,
You're
that
so
one.
indecisive.
I know, it's a family thing, so.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Stephanie?
Well, like Republican and Democrat, I think, well, there's other parties, first of all, like you said, and then people get so, like, one side or the other, but then if you really started talking to them and getting to know them, you would realize that they agreed with things on both sides, but they were too prideful to admit it.
Right. Right. I would say that, with that, whether it's Republican, Democrat, conservative, being liberal, progressive, the worst thing we can ever do when we vote is vote straight down the ballot. Just saying, I'm going to vote this party and let it, because very rarely, again, even the people running, do they necessarily fully represent what that party says they stand for or what have you. And so that's definitely where, and I think because we're all of voting age, to say, like, we have that responsibility to educate ourselves about who's running, what the issues are, take the labels off stuff, right? And say what most aligns with what my values are, right? And again, going back to being authentic, voting in line with what is aligned with your values is really important. And again, that's why a lot of people are changing to independent. I mean, I personally grew up with both of my parents were registered independent for that reason. It didn't hurt them in Florida to be registered that because they could still vote in primaries. But like in Oklahoma, if you're registered independent, unless there's an independent person running, you don't vote in primaries. So there are, you're kind of forced a little bit in Oklahoma to kind of choose a party. Any other dichotomies?
I think OSU and OU. I'm diehard OSU for like years. I didn't have red in my closet, but I have a lot of friends who go to OU Law School because like it's one of the best law schools in the nation. And I think we don't always realize that. We just think strictly like OSU, OU, like what's the best. Mm-hmm. And we don't really think of like OU as a school or OSU as a school. We think of it like football or basketball and not like what all it brings to the table, I guess.
Or even just family tradition, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like, my whole family went to Auburn, and my cousin Cody was a freshman last year, and he was going to get a full ride to University of Florida because of his grades and stuff. And he finally decided to go to UF, and you would have thought my Nana and Papa would have fallen out. Mm-hmm. You're not going to Auburn. And we're like, nope, this makes logical sense. School's going to be paid for, And Cody's just very straightforward, like that was an easy decision. And it just blew their mind that there wasn't loyalty to the family tradition, right?
Yeah. I mean, I have some friends that go to school here because they want to get an ag degree, but like they grew up OU fans. So like they still are OU fans, but they're OSU students.
Mm-hmm.
I would be lying though if I didn't say it used to really bother me to be on Auburn's campus and somebody wear an Alabama shirt.
I mean, I agree. I think it's weird, but like it is the case for some people,
Yeah, I know. I'm just being honest.
It bothers me.
Yeah.
See, I like not being from Oklahoma because no one at home cares.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, cool, you wear orange. That's new.
So what's one last false dichotomy you want to talk about that you want to kind of poke some holes in?
Vaccines and anti-vaxxers.
Ooh. Why is that one not so either or?
Some people can't get vaccines because of their immune systems, and like, I mean, if you think about it, like the intention of vaccines is, I mean, not the full intention, but like part of the benefit of a vaccine is for those people who can't get vaccinated to keep them safe, but like, if you're not vaccinating, then you're not. I think it goes along with the mask thing, kind of.
And then you have the whole other side that's like, but we have to have this many people vaccinated for herd immunity to work. Like it only works a certain percentage. And yeah, that's a complicated one. Usually, I mean, I remember, I had all my vaccines growing up. So that was just something that I thought, okay, it's normal. Like the doctor tells you, have your kid, here's the vaccine schedule, you go about. So we had Wilk in Alabama, and there was a vaccine schedule from our doctor there. And then we moved here. Wilk was 1.5 years, and according to his schedule from Alabama, he was supposed to have a 2-year vaccine, and then a 3-year, and then a 4-year. So we go set him up with a pediatrician here, and I was like, so is he going to get his 2-year vaccines? And he's like, that's not the schedule in Oklahoma. I was like, hold on, what? And he's like, yeah, every state decides on what their schedule is. I was like, shut the front door. Like, my mind was blown. Like, I just didn't understand. It was my first time realizing, like, what? There's a difference. People have different opinions even on how vaccines should be taken. And that just opened my world to, like, okay, again, like, this isn't so black and white as I thought. I mean, who knew? So now you all know that before you all have kids. You're welcome. So all that to say, what do you think we are going to try really, really hard to do in this class?
See both sides.
See both sides, as well as
Agree to disagree.
agree to disagree,
The in-between.
the in-between, even more sides. So again, our brains, one thing we have to realize is that, like as humans, our brain is structured to create simplicity. Our brain's taking a lot of information, and all it's trying to do all day long is organize it all to make it clearer and simpler for us. What's the most clear and simple thing? This or that, right? We've got to fight it intentionally because the world is too complex for that to just be the basis. Very rarely does any conversation come down to either or. What we've got to start thinking is, instead of these false dichotomies, this is the language as I lose my train of thought. This is why I make notes for myself. Both and or and. My brain can't think. We've got to start thinking in both and type thinking, processing. So if you take these false dichotomies, you could say someone could like vanilla and chocolate, right? Someone could prefer both Coke and Pepsi, right? And you could also add, again, you could add in both sides of those. Can someone be conservative on some views and liberal on others? And then could they be like way off in La La Land on others? Yeah, there could be a bunch of different, limbs coming off of that tree, right? So what I want us to commit to as a class right now is that I want us to get comfortable with holding each other accountable. So as we have these conversations over the next few months, if you start to notice people using that either or thinking or argumentation, just kind of say, hey, let's rephrase that. Can you figure out how to say that with a both and in that conversation? And let's not be afraid to do it to each other. Let's not be afraid to take that critique from other people, because again, that's a good way for us to grow as individuals. And that's a good way for us to start practicing what we call civil discourse, right? So being able to have these tough conversations, to know we're not always going to agree on everything, and to know that just because we have the conversation doesn't mean people's opinions are going to change after they leave here. But being willing to listen, that's the biggest thing. And the best way to do that is to change how we put together our arguments. Both and leads more to that civil discourse than either or, because that right there is very decisive. So can we all agree to that? Awesome. So with that, I am super excited to chat with y'all today about some of the food radicals that y'all read about or should have read about. So Susie has been awesome, and in color has put up around the room all of the 27 food radicals that you should have read about. It includes their biography as well as their picture. I wore black again. I am not going to learn in this class. I'm going to bring around, everybody is going to get a blue sticky note and some yellow sticky notes. What I would like for you to do is I want you to identify, let's say, 2 people that you feel like you are probably going to agree with their perspective the most, just based off of what you read about their biography, okay? So you read about them, you're like, hey, they sound a lot like me, or hey, I think I agree with what they are pursuing or they're doing. And so on your sticky note, you don't have to write your name, but I want you to write on the blue sticky note why it is that you think that's going to be a person that you probably are going to relate to, again, support their stance, their viewpoints, their perspectives, or have something in common with them. So you're going to get 2 blue sticky notes, you're going to choose 2 people. Likewise, you're going to get 2 yellow sticky notes. You're going to identify 2 of the food radicals that you think you're going to be most challenged by, or kind of based off of reading their bio, it already maybe makes you tense up a little bit, okay? And you're going to write on the sticky note why you think that person's particular perspective or story is going to challenge you the most. So 2 that you most support, 2 that you feel most challenged by. Once you identify them and you write it down, go put your sticky note on that person's biography and come back to your seat. Any questions? You'll hand out 2 sticky notes to everybody. Here you go, madam. Nope, don't have to put your name on it.
Why you think we're gonna, you're not gonna like me for the other one, or most challenging for you.
I'm already so indecisive that I can agree with everybody.
And see, I'm too much of a learner that I just think they all, like, I just think it's all interesting. Like, that's my problem.
Yeah, I read the test and I'm like, okay, so if I agree with someone, no.
How many do we need to be like?
So 2 people that you think will be challenged by, 2 people you think you will most support or agree with their stance. And so 1 sticky note per person, and kind of explain briefly why. Well, and you saw I got the case for it. I'm like, I probably don't need to just like have that getting chalk dust on everything I own. Yeah. So that was part of Wilkes preschool today. We went on errands. Trying. I'm going to call it my career in tech education. Yep. Nope, don't have to put your name on it. Do you have all of these in one big document? Will you email it to me? Yeah. Just whenever. I won't tell you which one, but it's kind of cool. In my online section, one of the students was reading the biographies and realized that one of the people's from their hometown and they know them personally and didn't know that they were included in the book. Kind of cool. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The woman from Tulsa?
Nope. I mean, you can kind of narrow it down based on who's in Oklahoma. But. And if you need to get up and move around and read the biographies to kind of refresh your memory, feel free to. Mm-hmm. That's what we got them there for. It was also weird, just side note, Alex Evers that's in there, he's my son's karate teacher. And that was also kind of interesting.
My cousin's husband is named Alex Evers, but it's not the same person. It's the same name. I read it and I was like, it doesn't look anything like him and it doesn't sound anything like him, but that's his name.
Yeah. Well,
I think last year when we talked about the FBI department was at the correct.
I still think it is.
I think it is.
that it's what?
So Stillwater has like a.
It has an FBI, there's an FBI office in
Where
Stillwater.
it's at.
Oh, it's by the Fountain Square Aspen. So if you're looking at Aspen, you go to the end of the building towards the gazebo, look to the side, and the office is right there. There's actually a sign on the wall that says
We thought it
FBI.
was the karate band that goes around.
No, I
We had this whole theory about it.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's hilarious. That's pretty good.
My friend had to talk to the FBI, and like the white van was right outside, like parked right next to her vehicle. Like when she moved up, and she's like, "Guys, it has to be the white van." We're like, "Okay."
So then we just, obviously
Yeah.
went from there. Naturally.
One of the guys that's in our Sunday school class works there. He's an FBI agent. Which I'm like, are we supposed to know that? Like, I don't. Okay, so this one that says about fighting for small farmers, was that with Bill Bullard or Fergal Anderson? Bill? This one? Perfect. Okay, let's try to wrap up in the next 2 minutes. All right, so as they're finishing putting their sticky notes up, what I'd like for y'all to do is I'd like for everybody to go stand by one of the people that have sticky notes on it. Again, I think there's quite a bit with sticky notes that we should be able to kind of spread out where we're not person by person. You know what I mean? So that may mean you've got to take like 2 people beside you, but let's have everybody at least by.
You're saying about one we put ours on?
It could be the one closest to you, so like you could do that there. Okay. Perfect. So I just kind of want us around the room. All right, I'm gonna.
I'm looking for Mark. Where's Mark at?
Mark, is anybody standing by Mark?
No. Oh, wait. Mark Oshima?
All right. Good there. Or you could stand, yep, that would be perfect. Yes. Is everybody comfortable? All right. What I would like to do is go around the room, and I would like for you to the sticky notes that you're closest by, or the person you're closest by, is just kind of like give us a synopsis of who that person is. You don't have to read the whole bio because everybody's read, But then I want you to say kind of what were the reasons people gave for supporting them or feeling like they would support them versus feeling challenged by them. All right? And kind of let us know, like, did everybody say they would probably support their perspective, or was it split? What did it look like? I'm going to start with you, Briar.
This is Jackie Dill. She's a Native American. And she just uses all her skills to be self-sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
That's really why people like her, because she's Native American and she's self-sustainable. She's lived off the land since a young age.
Mm-hmm. So people kind of like what Jackie seems to be for, because this idea of just like going back to nature, how things used to be, seems kind of appealing, maybe? You can see. And then who's the other guy there?
Dan Boytas. He's a molecular biologist and plant breeder.
Uh-huh.
And says editing genes makes something GMO. So I guess they're not for GMO.
Okay, so this person's like, I'm going to feel challenged by them because this person is obviously doing research that contributes to the development of genetically modified organisms. Okay, what you got, Jensen?
This is James Underwood, and he's the one that programs robots to herd cattle and manage weeds and monitor fruit production.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't like that, or they do like that because it's super cool and it's solving a lot of farming problems because a lot of people don't want to work hard anymore. And then the ones that don't like it say robots are taking over the world, and it's scary in that it defeats the purpose of on-the-farm life.
Ah.
And then glitches.
Oh, yeah. So maybe they feel like technology is not always a good thing, right? Okay, what we got over here?
Okay, so first there's Tabor Ward. She's the goat milk farmer that also uses her farm for like events,
Mm-hmm.
like field trips, summer camps, that kind of stuff. But so she's like intending to educate the public, but also use the sustainable, ethical food production practices. And this says that they don't see how birthday parties and goat yoga have anything to do with sustainability.
Oh, okay. So think just kind of their perspective is going to be a little challenging there.
And then Mark is the one that says that water and soil and sunlight aren't necessarily the most important aspects, and how technology is also necessary in food production. And this one says that he's a co-founder, so is he just trying to take credit, or is he actually farming with the organization or business or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
But the positive side is that his stance is beneficial because it won't limit agriculture to just rural areas.
All right, very cool.
And then Katie was 50-50 if people liked her or not. She's a food justice advocate. She knows that people get in stressful situations where they can't afford food, like healthy food supply. And so she has a mobile grocery store, and she has programs to reduce costs of fruits and vegetables for low-income people. And on the negatives, it says, how can she reduce the price of foods, and how do you determine who has access to low-income programs? Because if you where they are at, how do you know who actually is if you're just running the program? And then the positives are that she's empathetic and selfless, and she understands she can't change the world, but she's making a difference, and that she saw a need and put action to it.
Awesome. Okay.
All right, this is Liz Specht. She's the one that's a scientist helping develop plant-based meat. There was one positive saying that she seemed more inclusive of other people's diets, and that it was a good idea to gradually, rather than altogether eradicate all meat, just kind of implement it slower. But pretty much all of these negatives are based on loving meat and understanding that it's kind of a necessity, that they don't think switching to plant-based is going to save the world, and that her argument seems a little bit one-sided.
All right.
That's pretty much.
So I would say definitely so far she's one of the most polarizing, perhaps, people that we're going to experience this semester. So that's something to kind of, again, in the back of your head say, this is my initial perspective or perception. Let's hear what she has to say, and we'll kind of come back and reevaluate that.
Okay, so Cody Carlson
He was a lawyer. Before he was a lawyer, he went undercover to different farms and stuff to capture like cruel animal conditions and everything. And a lot of people felt challenged because they felt like it was a bad threat to animal ag. And then everybody has a different point of view, you know.
Mhm.
And then another person said it's hard seeing past animal rights activists.
Yeah, he's going to be another one. He's going to probably be one of the first ones that we focus on the most. It'll be fun. And then who's that beside him?
Oh, Hannah Dankbar. It's because of the banana trials and everything. One person said, I don't see how human feeding trials with bananas will help. And then another one liked it, I guess. I think he said, promotes being a scholar activist, wants people to learn how to truly make a change with education.
So yeah, that'll be another, because there's kind of two of our radicals that are kind of on that boat of like, we're not anti-science, but we are pro-transparency in what we're doing. So that'll be an interesting conversation to be a part of.
I have Trent Luce, who is, he just like goes to the urban areas and tries to educate instead of just talking about it. He tries to go there and educate them. One said the rural-urban divided is a huge issue. This man has found different ways to impact many people. Another one said, I think it is very important to educate the public on how livestock are raised. Many find one rotten apple and think the whole industry is like that. And then another one said, I like him because he is taking the time to tell and teach people about food regulations. And then I have Katie Michelle, and she went to college and lived in a house that was like non-GMO, but she is type 1 diabetic, so she has to have GMO bacteria that like live. And then it was all negative. And it said, I can understand where she's coming from. However, everything seems very one-sided. And then another person said, I think GMO foods are very important and it is feeding future generations. And then another person said, I personally don't see a problem with GMOs, so learning her thoughts will be interesting.
Oh, so rather than so much, they're kind of saying, I don't know that I agree yet, and it's going to challenge me, but hey, let's hear it. I like that perspective. What you got?
Aruni Futurowski. She's a food meditation coach. Spiritual journey taught her not only how to live, but how to eat, and the three negatives are, I don't understand the concept behind a food meditation coach. I don't see the importance of a food meditation coach, and I have no clue what a food meditation coach is.
So we have a learning opportunity this semester, okay?
And then the other one, I picked her because she is working on the part when the food is ready for consumption, and we often forget about how important that is.
Yeah, true. Stephanie?
This is Jimmy Kinder, and he's a no-till farmer, and he was like, sounds like one of the first people to adopt that. And then someone liked that because they said no-till farming has worked great in rural Oklahoma. They've seen it firsthand, and the changes Jimmy has made for agriculture.
Very good.
This is Evan Ellison, and he's a molecular biology student, and he grew up farming GMO crops. And he sought to be part of the genetic revolution to improve crop varieties by studying molecular biology. Everyone else seems to agree with that because we think that we need to modify our crops to be able to feed more people. And the person that disagreed says they don't particularly mind what his beliefs, they just want to know how he's going to accomplish this.
Okay.
So,
got it. And then who's that person?
it's Dan Derica, member of Dancing Rabbit Eco Village in Missouri. So they build houses out of straw and mud, and almost all the energy that they use is renewable. They have gardens instead of lawns, and their carbon footprint is only half that of the average American. And one person, they disagree with it because they don't see it lasting, and they don't see a lot of Americans adopting it. And the person that agreed with it likes it because he built an eco-village for rabbits.
All right. Okay, what are you next to, Kylie?
I have Dan Brown. He's a small farmer in the state of Maine. He got told that he couldn't sell raw milk, so they took this all the way to the Supreme Court in Maine. So they built a case out of this. And there's two that are for him. Because he is for agriculture and trying to get like milk out there. And one person said, I can agree with Dan because I think it is very important to like accommodate small farmers.
Okay.
Ray Archuleta, so that's how you pronounce it. He's a soil scientist for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and his big thing is leading a new health movement based on using agriculture methods that mimic nature. And he teaches and educates people the importance of leaving the organic matter in soil. And people agree with him because he's spreading his knowledge and how to preserve the soil, and then he sees the importance of educating others on how to preserve the soil.
Okay.
Okay, I got Bill Bullard. He's the CEO of RCAF USA, which is an organization fighting for the independent U.S. cattle producer. Bill and the members of RCAF USA are intent on making sure the cattle industry does not suffer the same fate as the poultry and hog farmers. We learned from Bill that it isn't the RCAF USA that is radical, but what is radical is how the U.S. livestock sector has changed. Two of us agreed with him because how he is fighting for independent producers. And then being a cattle raiser, he also makes sure that we can still make a profit and not suffer. And I also agreed, because I didn't write down on there, but how the U.S. sector is changing the livestock sector. Because I live over towards Arkansas, and the poultry houses over there are booming like no other. And so poultry and hogs and
Mm-hmm. I'm just nodding my head. Mm-hmm. And last but not least.
Virgil Anderson, he taught the importance of giving political power to peasant farmers, and of the bold efforts made by small farmers worldwide, he challenged the political powers of traditional corporations. And someone said they come from a small farm, so whenever someone is fighting for the small farmers, they back them up.
Awesome. All right, thanks for sharing. Y'all can go back to your desks. I want to ask y'all, based off of what we've heard, as far as why we feel like we maybe are going to be supportive or more understanding or in agreement with certain perspectives. Again, just based off the bio. I don't think anybody's read the whole book yet, right? So just based off bios, who we think we are going to kind of agree with, who we feel we're going to be most challenged by. What are some of our class biases we might want to go ahead and talk about? So one of the big things when we're talking about having civil discourse about not falling victim to false dichotomies is for us to be able to recognize when we step into these conversations, what's our bias? We all have them, right? We do. We have life experiences, opinions, things that all lead us to have a particular perspective. But in order for us to truly listen, we've kind of got to call a spade, right? And say, this is what it is. We're going to put it on the table. We're going to know that that doesn't mean they're wrong. We just need to know that they're there. So what are some of our class biases based off of what we said we agree with and what we don't agree with or feel challenged by?
The animal rights activists, it just has a negative connotation to it. I've read a lot of things about animal rights,
So not a fan of animal activists. And again, this might not be true for every individual in this class, but we're making a summary majority decision based off of what we've heard.
I think kind of along with that one a little bit is that a lot of us, it seems like, have backgrounds in animal agriculture. And so the one person who's kind of against or working towards plant-based products instead of meat products, we all have. It seems like a lot of us have. Not necessarily ill feelings, but it's challenging because of our background.
Right. And if it's something you've grown up with or you do, like, you want to defend it, right? Like, that's our natural inclination. And so sometimes it's hard to hear those critiques of what it is we do, right? Pro or anti? What's our class bias?
Oh, I don't know.
What would y'all say? When it comes to GMOs, what seems to be our class bias? Are we pro? Okay.
So kind of going off the background to animal ag is like the increasing in technology, like with the whole robot deal. Like that's something, like if we had a robot working on our farm, I'd hate it.
Okay.
So like I'm not a fan of the whole technology, but that might just be me. I don't know. I'm an
Cautious,
old soul.
cautious towards technology? Would
Yeah.
that be a fair thing? Okay. But is it, okay, so I'm going to say cautious towards technology. Is it cautious towards technology that could replace labor?
Yeah.
Is that the,
Yeah. It's like the more, because you have farm hands and ranchers that herd the cattle or pick the weeds, whatever, that have living. And Hispanics too, you know, there's a lot of them back at home that work hard on the farm. That'd be good.
it's interesting, and the reason why I want to specify that is if we just said we're cautious towards technology, I don't think that that would be true for people in agriculture because we tend to embrace a lot of technology. It's just the type and what the purpose is. The cautiousness towards tech that replaces human labor also differs regionally. So if you're a farmer that relies on migrant workers or H-2A workers, you're praying right now that somebody will come up with a harvesting machine because it's really hard to get the labor source they need right now. But perhaps if you're in an area of ag that's not as labor intensive as, say, picking blueberries, then yeah, you're like, I don't, you know, it just, again, it's a pretty complex conversation. What are some other biases? Nobody really addressed it in particular, but a lot of the food radicals, what they're pursuing or doing is based off of their views on two things, sustainability or climate change. What appears to be our class's biases towards sustainability? And,
We like it.
huh?
Sustainability. We have class talks.
Okay. Agree with that? Okay. So maybe like support sustainable practices. Now when the conversation moves to then being I'm doing what I'm doing because the effect climate change is having on agriculture and food production, what seems to be our class's bias there? Did anyone pick up on it?
We don't like being blamed for it. So we only support sustainable practices when it's stuff we're doing. And that's the way we do things.
Right. Do you feel like we class believe in climate change or don't? And again, that's kind of going back to that black or white, but if we were to dig deeper and as y'all kind of learn about some of these people, a lot of the people that y'all feel most challenged by are some of the people that are the biggest believers in climate change's effect on food production. So what kind of biases might that show for y'all? And again, you wouldn't necessarily know this by reading their bios. That's what I'm here for.
Maybe just like challenged by the concept of climate change. 'Cause like, I mean, like say it's not real, you know?
Okay. What other biases? When it comes to science, what seems to be the preference or bias of this class?
It seems like we support the people whose information is backed by research.
Okay.
And
put support ag science and research, because I think that kind of connects to the challenge by the concept, because there's research there, but we maybe sometimes are like, hold up, we don't know about climate change research, but then we know about research that has to do with sustainable ag practices so we're kind of, the more specific it is to ag, the more we're going to consider it valid, maybe. What else?
I think like practices we don't know about, we're not like 100% on board, like the food meditation.
Yeah.
Because like when I was reading it, I'm like, I don't know what it is either, and I don't know like how important it is. And I think like if it's different than what we've grown up with, we don't really want to learn.
So skeptical of foodies. What might I mean by the term foodies? Are they involved in the agriculture and food process? Yeah, because again, that whole process is from growing to eating, right? But what's a foodie? What maybe don't they have experience in? The production, what we would consider, and one thing we have to kind of differentiate is what is a commodity versus a product. Does anybody know the difference between those two things in ag?
The product is like when it's reached the consumer, but a commodity is what's coming from the field.
Like the big thing.
Yeah.
So products are often things that are more specialized from owner to buyer, right? So you go to the farmer's market and you buy corn, you're buying a product from somebody. But a commodity is something that's sold on a whole scale, much larger scale, that then is also often used later to refine. Very often are you buying at the grocery store a product. You're often buying the result of a commodity. So the thing is that foodies tend to be involved with products, but not involved with commodities. So we kind of, in ag, we kind of tend to separate the production of food into two groups. Those that are growing food to feed the world. Have we heard that? Mm-hmm. And then those that think local is best, right? So we kind of end up having these two camps, and do they kind of butt heads sometimes? Yeah. So we're kind of skeptical. But here's the question I want to ask. How many of y'all are involved in the production of commodities on a daily basis? Okay. So sometimes we got to bring ourselves down a little bit and just be realistic about the conversations we're having sometimes. Any other class biases that y'all can point out?
I think we're skeptical of like how people make profit per se.
Oh, yeah. Tell me more.
So like the goat thing, where I'm from, it's kind of like the goat yoga is like a really good thing. Like the way you guys do that and milking and goat feed and stuff like that. She's had to increase getting urban people out in the rural area. And a lot of people like have struggled with seeing, but like the urban people eat it up.
Yeah.
Like literally eat it up. So, and a lot of farmers don't see it as that. They see like, why are you bringing these people out here?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think about that, like tied into that conversation is agritourism, right? Mm-hmm. And like, how do we feel about it? I think about from the time that I was in like middle school, that's really when agritourism kind of started increasing a lot. And it was because people were, the people who were doing things ag-related to kind of bridge that divide, there was this sentiment of like, but they're not ag, they're not the ones really doing it. And then it was like, oh, but it's because we haven't, how many of y'all, like your elementary schools, have school gardens at them? Anybody have them? Who usually puts in school gardens at elementary schools? Is it the local FFA and 4-H chapters? Some communities, but I would honestly say majority no. A majority that we find are other organizations, maybe the ones we don't necessarily consider pro-ag, that are actually doing ag education at the elementary school level, because we've kind of said they'll learn about it when they get to high school. Like, we don't need to worry about that. And then by the time we get them in high school, they don't know, or we feel like maybe they've been given misconceptions.
They don't care to know.
Or they don't care to know. Yeah. So we do tend to have this skepticism of like, well, who's doing the educating, right? So not just, I think, how they make money, but who's doing the educating, which I feel like we then need to say, well, why aren't we? If that's the case. Any other biases we want to point out? Or maybe it's your own personal bias. I'll be honest, one of my biases is that anytime I feel like people are only making a decision to make because of money and not because of people, I tend to get skeptical of it. Like that's one of my personal things, and it doesn't matter what aspect they are in ag. Like I start questioning, like, do you forget that there's people eating? Do you forget that there's people we're paying that work for you? Do you, like, to me, the people side matters a lot, and that's a bias that I have to work through, because my family, we have our own business in ag. So does the bottom line matter? Yes. Like I get that. But I get skeptical when that seems to be the only thing driving decisions that we make. Any other personal biases you want to admit?
I think we're skeptical of things like the food medication and stuff that we just don't know anything about or have never heard of.
So we don't know what we don't know, right? And what that ends up doing is it creates fear. Like sometimes we're just like, I don't want to know, la 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 la, right? It's just easier not to listen because maybe that means we're going to be challenged or whatever. So it's kind of that willful ignorance is what we call it. And so, yeah, then we kind of become fearful towards it. Anything else? Any other biases?
I think we're what they call like the witch lady or whatever.
Uh-huh.
I think we're fearful of using like old remedies with new technology.
Oh. I'm going to call that nostalgia meets reality a little bit. I think we do have a little bit of this like yearning to go back to simpler times, right? Because again, those of you who have taken change theory class, there's always unintended consequences to everything, right? Any innovation, whatever it may be, if it's a thought, an idea, or an actual physical thing, there's going to be some unintended consequences. So sometimes we're like, maybe innovation isn't always best. Let's dial back a little bit. But at the same time, we're not going to, as a class right now, we say we're not going to be so crazy to say, let's go back and just swipe everything clean. Let's just kind of maybe pick and choose. Any other personal biases that you're like, let me get it on the table?
I think I have one that's just personal, and maybe it's because I now live away from home. But like, there's, like farmers markets, a lot of times will have like smaller producers. But for me, when I go to the grocery store, I see products from home. And so I'm like, why would I not want to buy these products because like, okay, so my hometown is a big lettuce producer in the winter. So like when I see lettuce in the store that says Pamela, Arizona, like I want to buy that because chances are like I know the family who my purchase is going to be supporting. Where if I go to a farmer's market here, I don't know who I'm supporting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like I feel prompted because if I'm shopping at the grocery store, I could be supporting home, I guess.
So more than just supporting your local growers, you're saying I'm a big fan of point of origin labels.
Yeah.
Can that be a contentious conversation?
Yeah.
Especially in the beef industry, right? If we talk about cool and all of that. I mean, I've told y'all I am a fanatic about Florida's orange juice. Florida's natural for that same reason. it breaks my heart that it's so hard for me to find Florida strawberries out here. You can't eat anything better than a winter strawberry from Florida, but they don't get shipped out here very much. It's really hard. I fight you on it. We could have a whole discussion about Brix content in fruit. So, does anybody know what Brix is? It's how you measure sugar content in fruit. Florida's environment, because we're more humid than California, all of our fruit tends to have a higher Brix content. So it may not look as pretty because we also have more pests and disease, but it tastes better. That's my plug. I have that same bias too. Any other honest biases?
I know, right? When I see the word rural, I'll like immediately go to it. Like rural and urban, it's like, oh yeah, rural area. Because on the, I forgot this thing, but I put on there, like, I've seen how well no-till farming is, and he came to Burlington strictly to see because our area is like so rural, and like a lot of urban people, like, they just don't understand that. And I think right when I see people supporting rural areas, I'm like, I love them.
Yeah.
And that's just like how it is.
Yeah. You know, again, I think that's something common in ag. We're definitely pro-rural, which is good. Like we have got, again, a whole nother conversation about community development, right? And the need to invest more in rural areas. But again, going back, because our brains tend to want to fall into those dichotomies, because we want to support rural communities so much, what do we end up doing on the other end of the spectrum? The cities are bad, right? Like,
I'm not gonna lie, I think urban agriculture is so cool though. Just being fully transparent here.
Yeah.
I worked in Phoenix for like 3 years. I saw a lot of it.
It's some neat stuff, but you know, for the most part, I mean, I'm that way. I'm like, I just don't know that I could ever live in a big city. And it's like, I don't know where the Lord's going to take me, right? But at the same time, I'm just like, no. But we tend to, I don't want to say anti-urban, but again, we have a lot of that rural-urban divide and kind of debates that we very much, we're pretty good about stomping our feet down on one side of that argument and not really seeing the nuance there. Any last biases? Why do you think it's helpful for us to do this before we start talking about ag issues on Thursday? Because any of the things that we talk about, we are going to have an initial opinion on. And so one thing that I hope that this is helpful for y'all to do too is that not only do I get to see kind of what y'all's biases are, but that also helps me know how to add some different perspectives to the conversation that we have as a class. Because it would do absolutely no good for us to have an ag issues class where all we do is sit and nod our heads at each other and pat each other on the back, right? That's called groupthink. And have y'all ever heard that term before? Groupthink is what caused the Challenger space shuttle to explode in the 80s, right? If you've never read up that story, you definitely need to look into it. But essentially, what they had come up with to put the shuttle together to ship it across the country, there were some people that knew it wouldn't work, but because everybody else in the group said it's going to be fine, they didn't speak up. And it's the reason the shuttle blew up, right? So we don't want to fall to groupthink. We want to, again, get more and more comfortable. If all y'all do in this class is come out more comfortable with being able to actually not only speak your perspectives, but again, listen better, then we've accomplished our task this semester, okay? For Thursday, what I would like for y'all to do is, if you haven't already read ahead, I want you to read from page 31 to 56. So it's kind of giving us an introduction to some of these food radicals, but also kind of the premise of the book. And the first section, again, it's part of the book that's all focused on the production of food. So we're going to get some really neat and differing perspectives. Make sure while you're reading to kind of not necessarily take notes. Like, I don't need for y'all to know years and all that stuff, but just like, what are some of those big ideas that you're like, I never thought about that. Maybe underline it. Or if they talk about a particular term, write it down and jot some notes and bring those to class with you on Thursday. All right. See y'all later.
Please.